I want to speak about the sex scene that is used here, a series of sex scenes, rather, which I think is one of the highlights of this play. But before I do that, I wanted to mention one point, and that is, Danny is a very honest character. He has some moments of wit where he exaggerates things, but for the most part, he keeps things quite honest and upfront, which is why he's had difficulty with women in his past. But one quality about you as a person that I found, and I don't share this in any way with who I'm about to speak with, but even people that are sort of in, your choir, speaking to the choir, seem to have some kind of although minor irritant towards your saying something along the lines of, if Dan Linden says, you write plays, you write poetry, you write poems, sorry, not poems, but novels, what do you think you're the best at? And you say something like all three, and you go into detail about them, they think that that's turning people off, and also creating a rift to what you could potentially make it. I've made the point in counter to that all great artists, for one reason or another, have been rejected, and that the reasons behind them are usually different. The only similarity I see between, say, a Melville, a Whitman, and you is that they're not in a system of any kind. The system has changed in many ways, but it is always the same kind of heritage. You have to be in the system in order to get out there, and if you're not in the system, you will be fought till the very end, and that is usually what leads to the Walt Whitmans having some kind of financial collapse. Just as with you, most of your stuff isn't really out there for the masses to see, and not the masses, but the very best of the masses, the most intelligent of the masses.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I don't know what I can really add to that, except I generally agree with that. I mean, it's one
But
of the.
what do you think this tendency is to have this minor irritant? Because if you can back it up, I don't see what it's a problem, and I don't see how there should be positing any theories over why your stuff isn't getting published. There can be such a thing as just the world being fucked up, being wrong, and not getting anything out there, and not producing things of art, and not cultivating art when it's young.
Well, we have a tendency to want to believe that people in authority or organizations that run things are in power because they've earned it. And so there's an assumption that if someone is the mayor of the town, he's worked for many years and made his way up the political ladder. We have an assumption. I've just talked with people today about, what was it, yesterday? I was talking with people about assuming here in Texas that if you're rich, you must somehow be good. You must have worked hard. You must have done this, that, or the other thing. And so if someone is not published by a big house, there's the assumption there has to be something wrong. Because how could those experts be wrong? Of course, if you look at a Zadie Smith or Dave Eggers or Donald Hall, who just recently died, or all these people who've had their poems or plays or novels or what short stories published by big presses, it's overwhelmingly bad. And it's obvious, and I've said this many times before, is people in 50 and 100 years, when I'm safely dead, are going to look at these videos. They're going to read my 13, 14, 1,500 essays, whatever I've written. They're going to read my stuff, and the quality is going to be evident. And the points that I make about the art scene at the turn of this millennium, people are going to say, I don't get that, because he's not only correct, but he's obviously correct. I'm obviously correct that this film or this director or this writer or this book is good or bad. How could people have I mean, but there is that natural tendency. And for young people like this Dan Linden, who's 21, or Chin, who's 21, or this Jose Gabriel in Puerto Rico. I think he's 20, or Mohel, who's like 17 or 18 now, or this Wakas kid who's 21, or Laura Woods who's 21 or 22. Um, Laura, though, doesn't buy it, but uh, they have been raised and acculturated to think that authority means a certain expertise and a certain rightness. And uh, I'm always heartened that someone like you a few years ago when you were a bit younger, or this Lyndon, or some of these kids in these younger 20s, what I've told Jessica is sort of like the second generation of Cosmoetica fans that is now coming online or whatnot, that they are able to see. Because if I read, like when Shin just recently wrote this thing about my elements of a story, um, I would probably agree with 95 to 90% of his points. And the few minor points that he gets are usually, or doesn't get, are usually cultural differences that he's mistaken or something. But he's obviously coming in with an open mind. Most people in these MFA systems aren't. They have a financial stake in things being poor. They have a financial stake in gulling and ripping off people. Oh, we can show you how to be a great artist. You could be the next Emily Dickinson if you just want to pay 35, 40,000 for an MFA degree. And so, I mean, it all comes back to that.